Driving around Stonehills roundabout today, nobody could fail to see these wonderful horses, now fully installed, and capturing the attention of everyone who passes. In our last episode, you saw our sculptures leaving the Forest of Dean and arriving in Tewkesbury. They were in Edgewick's yard for 12 days, and to ensure efficient installation, preparatory work and lifting rehearsals took place. In this episode, we'll show you what happened the day they were installed. Very early on a quiet Saturday morning, the victorious Yorkist horse and its head left the yard. It was closely followed by the knight, travelling on the crane lorry. They took different routes to Stonehills, with the crane lorry coming through the town. Arriving at the roundabout in this direction allowed it to move within the cone's safety area in an anti-clockwise direction. The step low loader carrying the horse's body and its head approached from Jubilee Way. Coming in this direction enabled it to position itself so the rear of each vehicle came together. Because low overhanging cables in the area created height difficulties, assembling the components in the yard was not a feasible option. So it was decided all this would be done on site at the roundabout. Many practice sessions in the yard overcame minor assembly difficulties and proved their value by making the actual installation both quick and efficient. Having the weight of the horse's body evenly balanced when it was hanging freely from the boom was essential. The length and position of the straps affect this, and attaching them in various positions during practice sessions in the yard proved their value. The first thing to do was to lift the body of our wonderful destrier stallion onto its correct position on the concrete foundations. A smooth, even landing. When satisfied the body was in the right position, it then had to be secured. The first job was to mark, with a drill, where the holes in the concrete were required. The body was then swung away to give the crew unrestricted access to the surface of the foundations. Holes were then fully drilled to the specific depth required to hold the threaded rod. It was important to remove from the area all debris and have a clean, dry surface. Whilst holding the body away from the foundations, adjustments to the crane were required because the outriggers were sinking into the soft ground beneath. All David Allen's crane management skills were then required to swing the horse's body into the correct position, lining up with the holes in the concrete. Gently with the front, then the rear. A fast set epoxy was then inserted, followed by the threaded rods and bolts. With the body secure, our stallion's head was swung into position. The prepared holes in the neck then had to be matched with holes in the horse's withers and chest piece. In some cases this proved more difficult than others. Occasionally some gentle persuasion was the answer. We think we have a very handsome knight, so to protect his face, it was covered throughout his journey. As he swung towards his mount, he needed a little help to face the correct way. We expect he will be astride his horse for very many years, so it was important he was seated in the best position, and a comfortable one too. At last he was seated firmly in his saddle. Rods and bolts secure him firmly to his stallion's body. Temporary supports could then be removed. Looking victorious, happy and handsome, our knight finally needs to hold his lance and display his pennant. For protection during its travels, the pennant was safe within a plastic covering. At the centre of the pennant, a black bear. This was a symbol adopted by a group who met in the ancient Black Bear pub in the town. From this group, the Battlefield Society emerged, and so it has an affinity with the symbol. The original banner is still used in the medieval festival and resides in the Abbey, where it has pride of place in front of the west window. Around it are some designs by children from Turlbrook School. It is fixed to the knight, and the lower end is secured into the concrete foundations. Today we have a stiff breeze that proves it will swing. After several finishing touches, victory is complete and looking resplendent in the spring sunshine. Moments after completion, he is already attracting onlookers with cameras. Activity now switches to the verge, and the traffic cones have been rearranged so the low loader carrying Vanquished can reverse and be tail to tail with the crane lorry. Now the crane lorry is stabilised, the lifting straps used in practice are attached in their correct position. The team will install Vanquished in the same sequence and manner as they did for Victory. The first piece is the body of the horse that could well have been a palfrey. This is a very dejected horse. Unlike Victory on the roundabout, Vanquished's tail is lowered and his body tucked up. It's as if he understands he has been defeated in battle. The records we have of the battle here in the Gaston Field report it was a very bloody affair. Today we keep comprehensive details of all who lose their lives in battle, but in 1471 no such definitive list was made. But it is thought that many hundreds of men were killed. We'll never know just what happened to bring about the Lancastrian defeat on that fateful day in May 1471. Their defensive position on the Gaston Field was well chosen to make best use of the ditches and thick hedges that still surround the field today. And Queen Margaret's commander in the field, the Duke of Somerset, was an able and experienced warrior. We're lucky to have a contemporary account on which to base our interpretation, and at least one unspoiled and vital part of the battlefield from which to try to picture what might have happened that day. But only the ghosts of those who fell here remain to tell the tale. Maybe Somerset underestimated the cohesion of the confident Yorkist force. Maybe the communication between his vanguard and the young Prince of Wales's centre ward broke down. Maybe Lord Wenlock dissuaded the inexperienced prince from following up Somerset's diversionary flanking attack. Or maybe Somerset's attack was undone by the mounted spearmen that King Edward had wisely placed on the hill where Tewkesbury Park now sits. What we do know is that when Somerset's gambit failed, the young Duke of Gloucester, the future Richard III, was able to drive forward on the Yorkist left, turning the retreat of Somerset's army into a rout and rolling up the Lancastrian defensive line. A very striking part of this horse is his head, magnificent but bowed and appearing to acknowledge the defeat. As Margaret's army attempted to flee the field, many of them found themselves funneled by the surrounding hedges into a narrow field cut off by the river, and there fell in what was quickly to be known ever since as the Bloody Meadow. Others found their way back to the edge of the town, but were trapped by the River Swillgate that runs in front of the Abbey, there to perish as they tried to cross its muddy waters in their heavy armour, or caught by their pursuers. A Amongst those who fell on the field was the young Prince Edward, heir to Henry VI's throne and the figurehead of the Lancastrian cause. With him died Queen Margaret's hopes of securing the succession from her sickly husband. For those who managed to reach the safety of the abbey, even the abbot could offer no sanctuary for those accused of treason. The terrified Lancastrians were dragged from within its walls. Many of the lowly foot soldiers were pardoned, but their leaders could not be allowed to live to reignite the Lancastrian cause, and were executed at the town's crossroads, where its war memorial to the fallen of more recent conflicts now sits. Queen Margaret herself managed to flee the battlefield, most likely crossing the very River Severn that had barred the way to her rendezvous with her Welsh allies. However, her liberty was short, and within days she found herself returned in captivity as part of Edward's victorious entry to London, where her husband would soon expire, allegedly from his pure grief and melancholy at the demise of his army and son. Of those who fell here, perhaps 1,000 from across both armies, only the high-born would have been recovered by their families for burial. The rest lie somewhere here beneath Tewkesbury soil. This sculpture is their memorial. Now the sculptures are installed, Peter Goodhind, the project structural engineer, has come to make a final examination. Previously, in his office, he explained to us those aspects of the project which are of particular concern to him.
The main issue as far as the structure is concerned on the horses themselves is to ensure that they are constructed robustly. This is because the components of the horses are really quite substantial pieces of timber. The main requirement is that all the connections are with 2 bolts so that they don't form a hinge. Perhaps the most interesting is the pendants themselves. On detailed assessment, it became apparent that the wind loading on these could be very large. This has introduced a number of interesting problems, mainly ensuring that the pendants themselves will be robust, and they have been penetrated with a number of holes, I believe designed by local school children, to minimise the wind loading. As a result, they've been designed now so that they can swivel very much like a weather vane, so that they offer minimum resistance to the wind loading.
Very satisfied with what he has seen, Peter hands Phil a certificate of practical completion that will be passed to the local authorities. After all the years that have passed, we now have our memorial sculptures in place. We think they are magnificent, and those we have spoken to agree. I hope you do too, and we'll look again next month to see the ceremonies that mark the end of our project. Thank you for watching.